Okay, I don't often get to interview a president of the United States, but I'm doing that now. We have Abe Lincoln with us, and what's more remarkable is the man is dead. But I'm sorry to break the news to you. Actually, this is John King, and your kind of retirement job is playing Abe Lincoln.
Right.
So give me your typical. Now I know you were in West Virginia a couple of times recently. So give me your typical day or week or whatever as Abe Lincoln.
It varies from month to month. February is usually busy. You do about 12 programs, and this month we'll be doing 10. Some months, 1 or 2. So it varies. Last year I was out over 60 times doing Abe Lincoln.
Wow.
And most of the time, probably about half the time, my wife Marion went with us, and she was Mary Todd.
Okay.
So we did it as a combination.
Now, have you always looked like Abe Lincoln, or was there a certain age where people start saying, you know, you look a lot like Abe Lincoln?
Well, the way it began is I was working in southern Ashtabula County at the Highlands Church Camp, and a gentleman was talking with me that would do parades in Bloomfield. And he told me I looked a lot like him because I'd grown a beard for the first time. And it was somewhere around 83, 84.
Mm-hmm.
And
hadn't thought of it before that?
I had no clue that it was going to happen. And he was persistent. And after a while, I humored him by saying, well, how would I do it? And he said, you need to get a hat and a coat. And I said, where would I get a hat and a coat? And he said, I'll loan you mine. So for the next few years, I would shave the mustache off, and I would go borrow his hat a couple days before February 12th, or his hat and coat. And I was teaching third grade at Colebrook School at that time, and I went into my third grade classroom in the afternoon, would do a short social studies unit on Abraham Lincoln.
So tell me, when you do a presentation as Lincoln, what does it usually consist of?
There are a variety of things I can do. Primarily, the program is from log cabin to the White House. There are different ways of getting to the White House. One, what I call a river connection, because Lincoln was very knowledgeable of the river and spent a lot of time on the river, because he went to New Orleans twice and with barges with cargo on it. And he built both barges. One was 40 foot, the other was 80 foot. And the story behind that. There's his political career, and that he started out as an attorney and worked on the circuit. In the spring and the fall, he would ride the circuit. And then his law practice in Springfield, where he became the largest law firm in Springfield, Illinois, by the time he went to the presidency. The other is one we did twice this weekend, where you talk about Mary Todd's background and my background in the way of education, how we were able to live with how we got to where we were both had the same amount of education, but in different directions. Hers formal, mine self-taught.
So when you're saying mine, you're referring to yourself as Lincoln there.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any other way? And because when I do programs, they're in first person.
Right.
So when I get started talking about Lincoln, I just go the first person. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to
If I had my hat on, I guess it would be more understandable. But without the hat, you don't. Another way of doing it is talking about Lincoln's time in the White House. We can either do the Lincoln and his generals, or we can do the family life, as well as the different challenges that during the war that led to the end of the war, and looking at Reconstruction and what it would look like from Lincoln's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Which never happened.
No. Of course, I was dead, so I'm not real sure what happened.
Did your knowledge of Lincoln, did you like automatically go out and read books or read more materials on Lincoln as you started doing these presentations?
Probably the beginning. I got some books on it, but I did it primarily with the students.
So, if you're in a grocery store, do people come up to you and say you look like Lincoln? Or does that ever happen?
A few times, yeah. It happens. It's unbelievable. As I am now, very casual with shorts and the like. I've been in grocery stores. I went to a restaurant the other day.
And they don't know that you do this.
No, no. We were eating last night in Bridgeport, out of Bridgeport, West Virginia, and a person came up to us very timidly and says, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but has anyone ever said that you look a lot like me? And I went on a cruise a few years ago, and I went up to the omelet bar, and the gentleman behind it said, well, and the same conversation went, and we talked for a little while, and I shared with him that I do Lincoln and that. So the next morning I came up to the omelet bar and he says, "Good morning, Mr. President. What would you like to eat?" And he fixed me my omelet with the presidential flavor.
Wow.
And it was, so I did that for the next week. And
So it has its perks being.
Yes, yes, yeah. And but it's I'm fortunate that I'm the same height as Lincoln and have the same features. When I grew the beard, as I say, I'm fortunate that the gentleman saw me and thought that it would be a good thing that I would do, and had he not, maybe I never would have done it. Maybe someone eventually would have. But we were able to, I've been doing it for sometime in the mid-'80s. I would do it maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Then toward the end of my teaching career, again, I would do it maybe 5 or 10 times after I retired. And then the last few years, I have started working with a group called We Made History. And with them, there are 5 presidents and 3 first ladies.
Okay, yeah, I saw their website.
Right.
And it's different people that play presidents or presidents' wives and that
Right,
sort of thing.
right. We have a Taft, we have a President Grant, we have a President Garfield, a President Washington, and we used to have a Teddy Roosevelt, and unfortunately he passed away a little year ago. The more I study of Lincoln, and I find significant bits every once in a while, 2 or 3 times a year, I'll come across something that I never thought about that are significant in what he accomplished or didn't accomplish and why. For example, I was looking up information on Gettings to help dedicate the law office. They moved it and they rededicated it. And in that study, I found out that Gettings and some of the part that he had in the war, in the beginning of the war, was that 1/3 of all the military officers in the North resigned and went south. And that created a problem with the lack of leadership in the North. And that's why the war didn't go very well. Because they had, for example, Colonel Magruder was in charge of all the military around Washington, D.C. He pledged to Lincoln that he was trained under Old Glory and that he would not desert it and he would die defending Old Glory. 3 days later, he resigned and went with the state that he was with. I believe it was either North or South Carolina. And that meant that the person that was in charge of all the military in Washington had just up and left. So who do you put in charge? And the fear was that if you called the militia up, what if they were loyal to him and they took over Washington? So it created a safety factor and a lack of leadership factor. So, and that's something I've read for 25 years, and that's the first time I've read that. So there's always new things coming up that give you a better picture of why things happen the way they were. that you would normally think, how did it take 4 years for the war to come to an end?
Lincoln had a lot on his plate, didn't he?
Absolutely, he did. And yet, I think he was wise enough to realize that he needed the very best leadership possible. So who better can you put in than the people that thought they ought to have your job? Other than the fact that on occasion, particularly Salmon Chase from Ohio, former governor of Ohio, was one of the leading candidates, and as he being Secretary of the Treasurer, from time to time told people that he should be, and that created some real challenges for Lincoln that would have been better not to have had to deal with. But he found a way to handle them and was able to keep him in line, and he did a good job of what he, as Secretary of the Treasury.
So what is your favorite Lincoln movie?
Well, the one last year, Lincoln, dealing with the 13th Amendment by Spielberg. It was incredible. It was as accurate as I think you could do any movie. There are so many things in it, little details that I've read over the years that I saw from the boys with their goat and pulling a cart in the White House to Mary's tantrums and Lincoln and Mary's bouts with dealing with life issues during the war and the contention that they had with it.
Are you the only Lincoln around? Lots of Lincolns?
I believe there's another one this area. I've never met him, but I've seen him in the paper a couple times. I went to, a year ago, I joined the Abraham Lincoln Presenters and joined them when they met in Columbus in 2013. 2014, we met at Natchez, Mississippi, and there were 135, 140 of us. In Columbus, there were probably over 150 of us, which got a lot of people looking.
Did you get a group picture?
Yes, yeah. In both cases, we did.
So do you look at them and say, I look more like Lincoln than that guy? Boy, I wish I looked like that guy.
Well, of them, I would say the top 5 or 6 I fit in that category.
Oh, okay.
And then last year I went to Gettysburg at the Shriver House, put on a contest, look-alike contest, and I came away the winner of it.
Wow.